Chapter 10, we look at the axial muscles. So it is artificial partitioning, kind of like the skeletal system, where we have the axial and appendicular skeleton. The muscles are the muscles, but we put them into either axial muscles or appendicular muscles. So the axial muscles, they have their origins on the axial skeleton. If you remember the origin versus the insertion, the origin is the attachment point to a bone that tends to be stationary. So the overall functions of the axial muscles is to support and move the head, vertebral column, support the abdominal and pelvic organs, chewing, mastication, breathing, other associated functions with the torso. And they are organized into groups based on location. For example, muscles of the head, the neck, upper torso, abdominal area, etc. So let's look at the muscles of the head and neck. And for the most part, the muscles that you're responsible for lecture match what we're doing in lab. So for facial expression, there's a muscle that's referred to as the occipitofrontalis, and it extends from the frontal area all the way back to the occipital area. It's one muscle with two sections or bellies, and it's connected by this aponeurosis, epicranial or epicranial aponeurosis, which is a flat sheet-like tendon. We generally refer to the frontal belly as the frontalis and the occipital belly as the occipitalis. So the frontalis, its general function is to raise the eyebrows. The occipitalis retracts the scalp, pulls the scalp back when the occipitalis contracts. Like so here, raising the eyebrows by the action of the frontalis. So for lecture and for lab, we'll focus on primarily the actions of the muscles, and with only a few origins and insertions being required to know. The orbicularis oculi encloses the eyes, so it closes the eyes like when you blink. The orbicularis oris compresses and purses the lips. Another circular muscle here around the lips of the mouth. So if you're going to whistle or kiss your kitty cat goodbye in the morning, you're going to use your orbicularis oris muscle, like so. For chewing, mastication, the masseter elevates the mandle, raises the mandle for chewing and biting, and that's located right here, right, from that zygomatic arch down to the lower margin of the mandible. So again, the muscle can only shorten and contract, so it's going to elevate the mandible in chewing, the masseter. You can feel that just by clenching your teeth. You can also feel the action of the temporalis, again by clenching your teeth. So these are synergistic muscles. The temporalis elevates the mandible, also for chewing and biting. And here we go, temporalis. Here's the masseter in action, elevating the mandible, and then temporalis works the same way. Oh, and this is just showing you, excuse me, where's my cursor? Origins and insertions. Origin of the temporalis. Insertion. It's going to be right there. Not that you need to know this, but just showing you in relation to the bone markings and the position of the bone and how it would operate. Okay? There's an insertion of the masseter and its origin. And why do I have this here? Ignore that. Okay. Muscles that move the head and neck. So the sternocleidomastoid draws the head down, like if you're going to look at your toes. Notice it's on each lateral side of the head and goes down towards the sternum. So when that muscle contracts, it's going to depress the head down. And or towards the opposite side if you're twisting your head, if you're only using one or the other at a time. And notice the terminology of the muscle. Sternocleidomastoid from the, excuse me, sternum. Cleido referring to clavicle. And then mastoid for the mastoid process, which you can kind of get a sense back here behind the ear. Oh, maybe that's why I had this here. Here's the mastoid process. Anyway, okay. And then also the trapezius extends the neck, like if you're looking up towards the ceiling, and that's the upper portion, axial portion. You can barely see a bit of it here. I believe I have a picture for you. Here you go. Here's the trapezius muscles, and we'll see it spans a large portion of the back, but the superior part of it, when it contracts, it's going to elevate the neck or the head to look up. Okay, extend the neck, extend the head. Okay. And then there's the sternocleidomastoid again, partially cut here. Notice that not all of the trapezius would lift the head, extend the head or the neck, only the upper portion here. Okay? Muscles of the vertebral column, there's a lot of them. There's 3 of them that we are traditionally grouped together as the erector spinae. It includes the spinalis, longissimus, and the iliocostalis muscles that you'll see here, spinalis, longissimus, iliocostalis muscles. But the 3 of them, we're just going to call them the erector spinae, and they extend the neck, just like the upper portion of the trapezius, and also the vertebral column. Like if you're really leaning back to look up on your roof or something. So to repeat, you don't need to know the individual spinalis, longissimus, iliocostalis, but they comprise what you do need to know, the erector spinae. And then on the anterior part of the body, vertebral column movement, the rectus abdominis, your 6-pack muscles, actually there's 8 in there, they flex the vertebral column, so they're antagonistic of the erector spinae, and they help compress the abdomen and the internal organs. Like for doing a sit-up, you're going to be primarily using your rectus abdominis. So some of the oblique muscles. Here's the rectus abdominis, and it's covered by this aponeurosis. Then we have external and internal obliques, and they are kind of on your side here. And the superficial one is the external oblique, as you see here. That's the external oblique here. Compresses the abdomen and flexes the vertebral column to the side as if you were doing side bends. Notice that a layer deeper, is the internal obliques. Internal obliques. And they do a similar thing as the external obliques. Okay. Then deepest, there's the transversus abdominis, which we usually don't see in most of our models, but it's the 3rd layer down or deep. And that's the transversus abdominis, and it helps to compress the abdomen along with the rectus abdominis. And there's your rectus abdominis, compresses the abdomen, flexes the vertebral column, again as if you were doing a sit-up. So notice flexing the vertebral column by the action of the external and internal obliques. There's the external obliques there. And then 1 layer deeper would be the internal obliques. On the model that we have, and you'll see that on your lab supplements, one side of the model tends to be the superficial muscles, and then the other side, the deeper muscles. That's why they look different. Notice here you can see the ribs and their cartilaginous connections to the sternum. Over here you can't, so that's a superficial pectoralis major that we'll get to, and that's a deeper pectoralis minor. There's that aponeurosis sheet covering the rectus abdominis, and this outer one is the external oblique. And then over here, this superficial external oblique and the aponeurosis has been removed, so that's the deeper internal obliques. And then notice the orientation of the fibers. This is like going from your armpit down towards the mid-groin in this direction. And this kind of, at least the middle and upper portion of the internal obliques, goes in the opposite direction, kind of from your iliac crest, your hip, up towards the opposite armpit area. And then there's a side view of the transversus abdominis. You can only see this if you remove the superficial internal obliques and the superficial most external obliques. And then here's yet another picture. This would be like where your belly button is, your side of your abdominal area. There's the rectus abdominis, straight midline. And then there's your external obliques, internal obliques, and then deepest transversus abdominis, the muscular wall of your abdominal area. And then another view here, your external obliques, muscles go in that direction. And then there's your internal obliques from mid to the high upper portion, superior portion, move in the opposite direction. Okay. So muscles for respiration, for breathing. We have the external intercostals. Their function is to elevate the ribs, move them upwards. And you see them here. They expand the thoracic cavity, the rib cage, expand the volume within the pleura, within the lungs, and help you inhale or inspire. The internal intercostals, that's in the lighter pink color here, and they go all the way to the sternum, and where they overlap, they are deeper than the external intercostals, and they force the ribs down, compresses the thoracic cavity with forced exhalation. Not just passive breathing, which we'll deal with later, but like if you were to forcefully blow air into a balloon, you'd be incorporating your internal intercostals. And then the diaphragm, kind of a half a balloon or parachute-shaped muscle, it expands the thoracic cavity when it contracts, because when it contracts, it kind of bows down, and it helps to increase the thoracic cavity in volume, just the way the external intercostals work to increase this thoracic volume. And there's the diaphragm there. So it's also involved in inspiration or inhalation. Okay, so external intercostals and diaphragm, the primary muscles of inspiration or inhalation, breathing in. On the models, again, you'll only see them on this right side because these are deep muscles, the intercostals. Here, moving all the way towards the sternum, that's a 53. Those are the internal intercostals. And then here, more laterally, just get a hint of them, are the external intercostals. And then this is the pectoralis minor. So all of this is deep to this one, the pectoralis major, the superficial muscle. And here's the action of the diaphragm. When it contracts, it bows down, increasing the thoracic volume. And then what causes the ribs to elevate, also increasing thoracic volume, is the action of the external intercostals. And that's it for this chapter. Short, we'll move on to the next one.